Hey guys, welcome to video number 10 in my Dispy primer on Christian nationalism. Now, in this video and maybe another video or two, I'm going to expand my study outwards beyond just the topic of Christian nationalism for a moment. And I want to look at the first 10 books that I would recommend you read regarding God and government. So it's a little bit broader of a study than just Christian nationalism. And essentially what this list of 10 books is this is what I wish I had when I started this study for myself about 4 years ago, once COVID came in and we realized everybody's a statist and Romans 13 means everybody shuts down their church. And I knew that wasn't right. But I, despite being seminary trained, had very little resources. And as some of you will know, it was the Lloyd Jones Romans 13 commentary that really helped turn the tide for a lot of people. It was a helpful book for me to kind of reaffirm what I already believed. But what I wanted to do here is give a recommendation of the first 10 books to read. And there is an order to them, and I just wanted to explain that for a couple minutes. And the idea here is that if I were to teach a course on political theory, political theology, these are the books I would have you read first. And the intended audience would be those who, like me, despite being seminary trained, have very little training in this particular field. And so you don't need to know a lot to read these books. And that's kind of the goal. Now, I think each book you could probably find 2 or 3 more that would go a lot deeper on the particular topic. So let me just very quickly tell you what the 10 books are, and then I'll circle back around and do a little bit of a summary of them. So the first one, Slaying Leviathan by Glenn Sunshine. The second book, The Emergence of Liberty in the Modern World, the Influence of Calvin on 5 Continents. And this is Doug Kelly's book. The third book would be Church and State in the United States. This is by the church historian Philip Schaff. After that, we have Return of the Strong Gods by R.R. Reno. He's a contemporary Catholic. After that, Christ and the Kingdoms of Men, David Innes, I'm guessing is how you pronounce his name. And after that, we've got my friend Anthony's book, Caesar and the Church. This is, I think, this is one of 2 post-2020 books. After that, we've got an important book, The Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrates, Matthew Trehella. I hope I'm saying that right. Next, we have Timothy Decker's book, just came out very recently, A Revolutionary Reading of Romans 13. And then finally, to cap off the list, we have the Good Doctor's Romans 13 commentary. So a little bit of logic here for these books. I know that a lot of people, they want to jump right into the meat and they just want to know what it is that we're supposed to do. And I don't think that's the best way to start. I think what we need is a little bit of a reference point outside of our own contemporary context. I think we need some assistance in getting out of our own bubble. There's a sense in which we're the fish that doesn't know he's wet, and it requires taking the fish out of the water to help him understand what it means to be wet. And I think for us, it's really important that we get out of our historical context first. And so the first 3 books that I recommend are in some ways church history books. And so the first one then is Dr. Glenn Sunshine, and the title Slaying Leviathan, Limited Government and Resistance in the Christian Tradition. Now, a couple things. Number one, Dr. Sunshine, a brilliant guy. He's a senior fellow at the Colson Center, and he's professor emeritus of history at Central Connecticut State University. He's also a really, really nice guy. It was been super helpful to me as I have interacted with him a little bit. This book's only 180 pages. It's a fascinating read, and despite the title, it's not as radical as you might think. Leviathan comes from the title of Thomas Hobbes's book, written in 1651, which was more or less an argument for the divine right of kings. And so, what this book does is it gives us a survey from the early church up to a much more recent time period, really the foundation of America. It helps you understand, in the broadest of terms, how Christians have thought about the relationship of the church and Christians and the government, going back to the early church and then all the way up to the American War for Independence. Super helpful book. This gentleman, Dr. Sunshine, is a first class scholar, and so you can have firm convictions about whatever you read in here. He references a lot of works that would be helpful for you to read. So that's the first book. After that, I would recommend Douglas Kelly's The Emergence of Liberty in the Modern World, The Influence of Calvin on Five Governments from the 16th through the 18th centuries. Now, Dr. Kelly is Professor Emeritus of Theology at RTS. He taught there for several decades. And what he does is, or what we're doing after looking at 2,000 years of church history, we drill down to Calvin and the influence of Calvin. I don't know that many of us really realize that Calvin is the father of really Western society. And so we look at his influence from Geneva, as his influence goes from Geneva to France and Scotland and England, and then finally the American colonies. So we move from a 2,000-year church history survey down to really kind of post-Reformation, or the second generation reformers, and what did it look like to think about God and government, and not exclusively God and government, but what did Calvinism worked out look like in these five countries? After that, the book I recommend, many of you will know Philip Schaff. He is the editor of, if you read the Ancient Near Eastern Fathers, pre and post Nicene, it's Philip Schaff's works. He edited a lot of those works. So he is really the church historian. And this is an important work, the Church and State in the United States. This was written in the 1880s as Philip Schaff was here in the United States. And what this book does is help us to understand just how much historical revisionism we've been taught. Schaff makes it really clear that America was a Christian nation. And as he describes the country he lives in the 1880s, you'll start to probably weep. He'll be depicting a country that you never knew existed. And you'll find it hard to believe it was the United States of America. This is 140 pages, is this book. Actually, I'm sorry. Yeah, 140 pages. Dr. Kelly's book is 140 pages. So these are small, almost booklets that you can get through pretty quickly. And that will then take you from a 2,000-year survey to a 500-year survey. And then we can zoom in on American history. And the reason American history is important is because, and I probably should have said this at the beginning of the video, broader than Christian nationalism is the topic of God and government. And that's really what needs to be studied, the topic of God and government. I did a 40-part sermon series on that topic, God and government, which is much more expansive than just Christian nationalism. And one of the big issues is that we're dealing with statism. That's really the predominant worldview of our day, even amongst many in the church, if not most in the church, is the view of statism. One of the central aspects of statism is being able to control the historical narrative. And so being able to understand the degree to which we've been taught historical revisionism as it relates to our own country is incredibly important for breaking that statist worldview. You've got to get out of the water You got to get into a more objective viewpoint to help understand the context in which we now find ourselves in relationship to the history that went before us. And so these three books will really help in that regard. I'm already at 10 minutes, so I will end this video and then I'll pick up with the next videos in the next. I'll pick up with the next books in the next videos.